I'm Richard Few. Where he appears on your screen is Jonathan Finch. With two directors at Sales Geek. We're based over in Altham, and essentially we provide ISM endorsed sales training to teams and individuals, and also provide part-time sales director services to small and micro businesses who need one, can't justify the full-time resource. So the reason I guess I've said that is to make sure that I frame this properly. We're not sat on here this morning proclaiming to be COVID experts or lockdown experts, but we are still very much trading as a business ourselves, and are working with businesses right now who are facing a lot of the same challenges that you guys are. My background particularly is in running sales teams in manufacturing businesses, so naturally a big chunk of our client base are in that sector. So I guess a lot of what we're going to share today really is not from a case of saying we've written a book on this stuff, but we're saying we are practically working through these things right now with people that are sharing a lot of the same challenges that you guys might be sharing. So I know Gary canvassed some thoughts and some views from you guys probably sort of about 10 days or so ago now. We are going to attack those topics, also mindful of the fact that 2 weeks in the current world is probably more like 2 months, so you might have moved on from some of those topics a little bit, but we will go through those. But there's a couple of bits we're going to chuck in that aren't on that list, and we're going to kind of kick off with that at the beginning. But like Gary said, we've deliberately not done this with slides. We didn't want to death by PowerPoint you. We wanted to make this interactive. We're going to share our views, answer some of those questions that we've already got, but please pop your hand up, chuck questions into the chat feature. We want to make sure that you guys get as much value out of this as you can while we're on the call. That's why we're doing it. So anything that you guys want to thrash out there, and me and Jonathan will pick that up. So I guess the first thing really that I want to kick off with is you're probably bored of hearing this by now, but whatever normal was isn't what normal is, or isn't what normal is going to be, certainly from a sales perspective. And a lot of the businesses that we are working with right now, some of them haven't had to change too much about what they do, but some have had to fundamentally make a shift in their strategy. So a lot of the questions, a lot of the topics that Gareth fed through for us were a lot about behaviours and activities and skills-based stuff, but I just kind of want to kick off at a top level really and just talk about a really basic sense, your sales strategy, i.e. value proposition, target audience, channels, etc. Because every business exists to solve a problem for somebody. If you're not solving problems for somebody, you're possibly not going to be in business for very long. But all of you guys, I'm sure, through your products and your product set, you are fixing a problem for somebody somewhere. Now, in the same way that your world has changed, like probably in an unrecognizable way for some of you guys, so have your customers or your channel partners, or however you go to market, their worlds have changed as well, which means that the problem that you solved before might actually be slightly different, or the way in which you communicate it might have to be slightly different. So like I say, a lot of the stuff that's come through at the minute is about how to gear up your sales team, but actually as a business, the words and the direction you give your sales team is possibly more important than the skills of them going out and executing that, because it might possibly not be as relevant. Your message that you had in Feb and March might not be quite as relevant as what it could be now. So the first thing for us is to certainly stop and have a think about the problem that you solve and how you structure your value proposition around that. I'm not going to dive into value proposition in any more detail, but if you guys want to talk about that, again, chuck it in the questions. We'll talk about value proposition. That obviously naturally then leads to target audience. So we talked about this is what we do, so this is who we do it for. Again, things change. We've got some businesses that we work with who are, certainly we see this when the business is changing hands through family generations, particularly, that maybe they might have had a channel model. They might have sold through people, through value-added resellers, through distributors, through agents, etc. And we're seeing a lot of people pivot out of that now and pivot into more of a direct model, because they can actually reach the audience that they couldn't reach historically. Pivoting into e-commerce and generally reconsidering who that target audience is, and then which channels they are going to utilize in order to reach that target audience. Again, the world's changed a lot through COVID, but the world's changed even more in the previous 5 years in terms of how people buy stuff. These little things with my geeky phone cover on it have changed behaviors massively in consumers, but those consumers take those behaviors back into business as well. And we generally tend to, there's a bit of a lag often. It's like F1 and then normal car manufacturing. We do adapt our behaviors as consumers, but then for the B2B guys in here, your B2B buyers will be adapting some of those behaviors, and we are used to seeing more stuff directly from brands, and we're used to seeing it through different channels than what we used to. So target audience and channels are also a really key thing. And then the fourth element of this, so this is what we're saying, who we're saying it to, how we're reaching them, and then the fourth one is what are we saying to those people, and making sure that it's relevant through those messages, and it's empathetic as well to the changes that you might have seen in their business, and making sure that, yes, from a marketing perspective, those messages are clear, but also you are arming your teams, if you have sales teams in your business, with the right words. Otherwise they'll go and make it up for themselves, and you might not like what they've got to say. I'm not going to say about go as far as scripts at all, but certainly key messages, you have to make sure that is written down. I know it's a bit of an oxymoron, but we have to be over communicating at the minute, and particularly if you have a sales function, and that sales function is the window into your business from the outside. You need to make sure those guys are super aligned to what you want to be saying and how you want to be saying it.
I think one of the biggest things you mentioned there is for me around the channel side of things, that we've seen companies do very well, but also some companies not do very well. Obviously, I don't know how everybody's sales function works. I might be generalising here, but I'm guessing quite a few people had, prior to COVID, a lot of field sales people. Now, there's a big debate going on at the moment on LinkedIn. Will field sales ever exist again? And I think there's an argument that it will exist in a different perspective, maybe. But one of the things that Rich mentioned there around channels, the way that we are now interacting with buyers, with sellers, has completely shifted. And one of the things that we're seeing from a training perspective and from a resources perspective is that there's been a big shift in the need to make sure that our salespeople are armed with the tools and the resources, like Rich was saying, to actually physically go out there and reach buyers anymore. Say, for example, you were trying to reach previously, I don't know, head of operations in a manufacturing company, or someone who was running one of the manufacturing lines, for example. You might struggle to physically be getting in there to see them now. I mean, my other half works for a big manufacturing company, and they've had to get somebody to come up to physically stay in a hotel to come and see something on one of the production lines that is broken. But that is something that you're hardly seeing anymore. People aren't really travelling to go physically to sites, so we have to have a look at other ways of doing that. And as Rich was talking about before, the ways of us doing that have massively shifted. And one of the things that I'm sure all of you guys have seen a huge increase based on the fact that we're all sat on a Zoom call at the moment, is Zoom. And Microsoft Teams is a huge thing that people are using a lot more now. But a big part for me is just making sure that you've integrated that into your sales process in some way, shape or form. Personally, for me and for the businesses that we've been working with during COVID, I've never found it easier to get in contact with a decision maker. And that will vary across different sectors. But if you call someone's office now, I mean, at the very start of COVID, this was even easier because everyone was a little bit into that. We don't know what we're doing. Let's divert the phone to one person. That person will divert phone calls out to there. And for me personally, that first 3 or 4 weeks, I practically could get hold of anybody that I wanted. I might be going a bit over the top there, but within the sector, it didn't take too much effort to get in contact with someone. And then also, physically to set up a Zoom call with that person or a Microsoft Teams, it was for the first 3 or 4 weeks reaching out to people saying, I wonder if you wanted to get together on a Zoom meeting to have a conversation. It was quite an easy thing to do. And I don't think that's died down massively now with a lot of people that are working from home or they've been furloughed. And it is quite easy to get in contact with people. But I think one of the questions I'd just be asking yourself in regards to channels is, are we now equipped as a business and as a sales organisation to shift to the way that the world is working? And what's happened over the last 8, 9, 10 weeks was going to happen anyway, but it probably would have slowly adjusted over 4 or 5 years to the place where we are now, which would have given everybody ample time to make sure that the team got the resources, they'd all got an ample phone camera or a webcam to be doing these sort of things. And one thing that I think will really hold people coming out of the other side of this is the inability to make sure that they've got the resources and ability to connect to people in the way that the new world will be connecting. Sorry, I've interrupted you right in the middle of that, Richard, and wax a miracle there.
Well, no, it follows on quite nicely actually, because for me the last point really was just going to be to just touch on sales process. That's something I can do days on, let alone fill a 1 hour Zoom with. But again, at a really, really fundamental level, I'm not sure how many of you have had a look at this, but 100% take a review of that sales process. Hopefully you've got a sales process mapped out at the moment for your business or for your teams that are out in the field. Again, sales process, it needs to cover probably 85% of your transactions. There's always going to be certain things that sit outside of it. But again, what we're seeing with the business we're working with is either the sales process itself has fundamentally changed, or even if those stages haven't changed, some of the behaviors around each of those stages has, if that makes sense. And the biggest shift actually, other than how we're interacting, i.e. Zoom calling rather than going and seeing people face to face, is, again, we're seeing this firsthand, is the speed or the cadence of the sales process has changed. So if you look at your sales process, and let's say there's 5 steps in that process, for argument's sake, there'll be certain parts of it which historically you go from point A to point B quickly, and then point B to point C would be slightly slower, and then quicker, then slower, and you'd have a certain speed. And actually, if you're utilizing a CRM tool well, and it's a decent CRM tool, that CRM tool will actually tell you what your typical timescales are between stages in there. So you might actually have that data available to you. But what we're seeing is that cadence is actually changing. So things that used to move quick are moving slow, and things that used to move slow are now moving quick, or things that used to move slow are now really slow. And a lot of that, again, is because the people at the other end of that, the buyers, their processes have changed, their buying processes have changed, their working behaviors have changed. They might be, again, it could be a procurement professional in a business. They might be working from home right now. They've got less contact to go back up the chain to get stuff signed off. There's a whole raft of things that are different now than what they used to be, which means that the speed of your process might be different. And the reason that's important is if you go too fast for people, or even too slow, you'll spook opportunities. Your teams will spook opportunities if they go faster than people are able to go, or they don't go fast enough. So understanding the cadence or the speed of your sales process and in the bits in between is really important, because that's generally where things get lost, because you get the pushy sales guys that go too fast, and then you get the sales guys that, and we've all dealt with them, who make you feel like they don't actually want your business because they've gone too slow. And understanding speed of sales process is really important.
I think, one of the things that we've been doing with a lot of businesses is mapping out sales process, because it has shifted, it has changed. One of the things here that I think someone had put question forward was around how to manage sales people and teams that are struggling with home working. And this ties in really with sales process, because unless you've got effective tools within your business at the moment to be managing that, it was pretty much, I know for me and Rich especially, Boris did his announcement, said everyone was going to be working from home. Rich and I dived in he dived in his car, I dived in my car, and we both ended up at the bunker and I started renting tech back to my house. I don't think Rich ended up with much of it. But we very quickly knew that our sales process was going to shift. I mean, I have spent more time than ever sat in this chair on Zoom calls or running webinars than ever before. And for us as a business, that's really helped us in a lot of ways, because we've managed to launch a few different things within the business. We've not fundamentally changed the reason for existence, but we have changed one of the ways that we're doing things. Obviously, if we were going to be coming and speaking at Manufacturers Alliance, we would have done that physically face-to-face. And today, myself and Rich, we're going to be on 3 different webinars. So we'll got this one first and 2 more later on this afternoon. We would never realistically have done that before within a day. We'd have spaced probably maximum out of having 1 in the morning and 1 in the afternoon. But it has meant, from our perspective, we can reach a wider audience. And webinars, things like this, are a really good tool from your perspective to be engaging with other people within your community and using that as the very first part of your process to sort of draw in leads. And we're touching on marketing here rather than sales process. But the digital revolution that has very quickly happened over the last couple of months has really given us a chance to not only adjust our sales processes to make things quicker and more efficient, but also, I think, if you use those processes effectively and are really taking a good look at what's in your sales process at the moment, how it did operate and how it's going to operate in the future, For the companies that are doing that now, or the companies that have already done that, they are the ones who are going to see the biggest gains coming out of this. And I think it's the companies that aren't sitting there and going, you know what, I am just going to spend half a day adjusting, looking, taking a step back out of the business to look at what we're doing within our sales processes and how we're going to actually go from the client that's first got in contact with us or the client's already dealing with us all the way through to getting that order. What resources do we need to make that happen? Is there anything in particular that the team need additionally to happen? Is it technology? Do they need some training on Zoom? And looking for those resources, that's where I think we'll see the biggest things. And the other thing that I want to talk about, just briefly on this and to sort of move on to the talking points you guys put forward, the other thing that tech has made available for us is the ability to manage salespeople a lot easier. It can be easier or it can be more difficult. I've got one client at the moment who, they're not doing this anymore, but at the very, very start of COVID, decided the best thing to do was to make sure that every single one of their team was on a Zoom call with them from 7 o'clock until 8 o'clock every single morning, so they could run through the same opportunities that they ran through the day before. Also did some motivational stuff at that time in the morning to try and get them all pumped up and to have a bit of a group chat before they started the day. What happened, it was complete overkill. It was overuse of technology. These were previously field sales execs that would get together on a conference call once a week to chat through opportunities. But because of this micromanagement sort of idea from, it was the MD of this company, that they wanted to be overly communicating with people, and it became a big issue for the salespeople themselves. You know, as people have got young families, people have got lives outside of work, they need to be doing things at that time in the morning, and it was real overkill. Now, for the companies I think that are doing this effectively, though, we've got other businesses that are previously, from a field sales perspective, the team would either get together, like I say, on a conference call once a week, and then once every quarter would physically get in contact with each other. We're now helping these companies run meetings, and they're running meetings with us, sitting in on them, which they're seeing all the other people within their sales team on a weekly basis. They get a chance to knowledge share, they get a chance to talk about deals they've got. And it's been great to see the collaboration and the team being brought together through effective use of digital meetings, because it's completely changed for certain businesses that are running this effectively, the whole way that they're operating and the knowledge share. And people that would normally never speak, you might have someone in the Southern Territory who's selling and someone right up in Scotland, these people would only ever meet once every quarter. But you've seen these people outside of the digital meetings that they're doing once a week, catching up on stuff, going, could you help me with this? I'm struggling a bit with this particular product line. I know that you've done that. And they're catching up offline. And if you utilize these tools effectively, I think on there, managing salespeople and managing your team can be really well done. There's two probably tips I'll give you on this. One of them, I think, is a lack of frequency. And when I say frequency, please don't anyone go at 7 o'clock in the morning technique. It didn't go down too well. But just making sure that salespeople know that that meeting is in the diary. Every Friday, for example, in the morning, we're going to catch up and we're going to run through these things. Make sure there's an agenda involved in that meeting. Some people hate structure, salespeople. Some people don't like it. I always say it's better to have structure to that meeting and everyone to know what they're expected to bring to that. But the second part of that as well, I think it's really important to celebrate success in those meetings. One of the things that we've definitely seen at the start of COVID, let's be honest, it's been difficult for people. Everybody's had that moment. I had one last week where I was like, I'm meeting social interaction, I don't know whether I can do this. And celebrating the little wins are really, really important. Rich said it a little while ago, for us as a business, we had to redefine what success looked like. We couldn't do what was previously successful, but the fact that we're still in existence, we're still flowing very nicely through COVID, we've still got a lot of clients that we're working with. I think we've got to redefine what success is, but also make sure our team know what the redefinition of that success is. Otherwise, you can end up with a team that constantly feel like they are failing.
Yeah, I think the redefining of goals is a massitive thing. I'm not sure whether anyone started that process already, and whether you'd actually set some targets and goals earlier on in the year. That I would definitely be reviewing those without a doubt, because there's nothing more soul destroying than people feeling like they're chasing something that's just completely unachievable. And like Jonathan says, that means you might have to redefine what success looks like. But I think to pick up on the sales management thing, I think that was the first question actually on the list, was about how to manage the team now that they're remote. The basics are the same. I think there's a couple of things we draw your attention to. The first one is goals. I think, again, for me, the best way to salespeople, typically, if you were going to profile them on this, they're usually quite high D, right? So they're goal orientated, they're outcome orientated, so they need focus on goals. would be careful not to make the KPIs their goals too much over and above their ultimate goal. And something we see quite a lot, that a lot of sales guys and girls get KPI'd into doing a set of tasks that means they can tick a box for you every week or every month, but isn't always actually taking them closer to the ultimate goal, which is revenue generation typically, right, for a salesperson. So I review KPIs, again, in line with understanding what the new sales process looks like. So you might have been targeting people previously on meetings. That's going to change. You could argue that actually they could do more meetings now because they're not traveling to and from them. But then they might find them hard to get. So again, looking at that sales process, thinking about what those measures are that you want them to focus on, but also reviewing any targets that pre-existed, whether they are relevant anymore. And I think outside of that, one thing I would definitely say, and don't get me wrong, I spent 12 years as a sales leader beating up my salespeople when I needed to, but I'm also a big champion of salespeople. And one thing I will say is happy people sell. And you have an opportunity now, certainly if, we've got some businesses where they've had their sales guys on furlough, bringing those back in the right way, has to integrate them back into the business and again be realistic around the expectations of what they're delivering, but also I think from a sales management perspective, I think the team meeting stuff is important, and again make some of that stuff social as well from time to time. Sales guys and girls are typically social animals, so to feed that appetite. But I think again now more so than before, all of these guys are going to be they're in the same storm, but they're in a different boat, if you know what I mean. So let's say you had a team of 10 salespeople, you probably had a decent view on, they've all got their individual challenges, they've all got their own little nuances and stuff. Well, that's been taken to an extreme because this has changed a lot of people's worlds, and people might have different childcare issues, they might have different issues with their partner and their work situation. So I think being more intimate with these guys on a one-to-one basis and really properly understanding them and their problems is going to help you from a leadership perspective and from a management point of view to get the best from them and give them the tools that they need to go and be successful. But like I say, it definitely I can see obviously Gary's got to start with why there. I'd say it starts with you. For your salespeople to be successful, it comes from you outwards, without a shadow of a doubt.
Do you have any other tips, Richard, Jonathan, just on other things that we could be measuring? Because for some people, it's not going to be possible. They've got some great salespeople who are doing well, with the kind of revenue generation metrics. But if that's not going to be as great as it could be over this next 6 months, what else could we focus on that would keep people motivated?
I was going to say, it sort of leads on quite nicely, really, guys, to the next point that we put on here, which is about contacting existing customers and developing business opportunities. Even for us at SalesGeek, let's be honest, our pipeline slowed down. It didn't mean that we stopped doing anything, and someone gave me a phenomenal piece of advice quite a few years ago. I'm going back probably 10, 11 years ago, where they went, sales is really easy, just keep asking until somebody says yes. It doesn't matter what's happening within the industry at the moment, if you keep asking until someone says yes, you will eventually make sales. It's always stuck with me, and it's a very simple piece of advice. But one of the things that we found was that COVID started, salespeople were going out, and were still going out asking, people were saying no. And they went, right, COVID changed, we need to change something, we need to dramatically move something, we need to shift the goalposts, we need to develop a new product line, we need to change the whole way that we're working. And for me, because our pipeline had slowed down, we didn't start managing things on revenue. We started managing on the amount of conversations that we were having with people, mainly to start with our key accounts. The first thing that we did when COVID hit was not go after fresh business. We went as a business, and the board got together and went, right, these are all of our key accounts, these are all of our clients that have loved us over the last 12 months, 24 months, 36 months. They need our appreciation and our contact first. Those are the ones that will realistically need our heads in their businesses. They've been the best clients to us so far, so let's focus on those. So as a strategy, we got everybody on board on that from a board perspective. From a delivery perspective, whoever was working with them, we got any contact them, myself and Rich, we're absolutely hammering the phone onto people, making sure to start with that they were okay. And the first thing that I think most businesses did was when, COVID started, we need to get some more fresh business. We've already got that in the bank, that's fine. We need to go and get more fresh business. We actually increased the amount of revenue that we were getting in from key accounts by just going out and checking if they were okay, because quite a lot of them went, no, this is when we need you most of all. This is when the time when we're really going to need to pull you in and work with us. So one of the things that I'd definitely say, that sort of answer your question, I was off on a slight tangent there. But the first thing definitely to do will be making sure that your sales team are keeping in contact with your key accounts. The biggest red flag in our business, and for companies that we're working with, is if we are looking at the key accounts CRM records or speaking to people and going, have you caught up with such a company? Oh no, they're fine, I spoke to them a couple of weeks ago. A couple of weeks ago, their world will have changed. And if you're not getting in front of them, somebody else will be going out and asking if they can get in front of them. And it's a prime time in some ways to be jumping onto new audiences and onto new clients. But before any of you are really focusing on that as a strategy, making sure that everything that you've got from a key account perspective is in line, is really worthwhile. So to answer the question, managing the amount of conversations that you're having rather than the actual physical results. Our pipeline stuff, our typical conversion time used to be anything between 2 and 3 weeks as a generalisation, depending on what that product was. But for larger scale projects, it's normally between 2 or 3 weeks. We realised very quickly that it was going to take probably 8, 9 weeks in some respects, 7 weeks. We've had some stuff come through, but we kept having conversations at the start, and that has started bringing revenue through. It didn't immediately because things were put on hold, but slowly the markets are unravelling, and as markets are unravelling, budgets are being freed up. When those budgets are freed up, I'm glad that we had those conversations 6 weeks ago or 5 weeks ago, because we are first in line now that the budgets have started moving. If we had just focused on the quick wins back then, we'd have discounted and moved out a lot of stuff out of our pipeline. Well, they can't book now, let's move on to the next thing. And it's, comes back to the Simon Sinek, it's the infinite game. If your salespeople are not running an infinite pipeline, they're always going to keep going. They're always focused on the finite win, the end of the month, the end of the quarter, the end of what's going on in front of them. You're never going to see those bigger results and things. And that's what we've definitely been advising people to be doing, is measuring conversations. But your first conversations to be checking as sales leaders, make sure your sales team is speaking to your key accounts, or if you've got an account management team, a key accounts team, make sure that they are in contact with them. If there was one part of your commercial function that is probably the most important to get back in your business if they're on furlough, is that key accounts team. The less contact you have with the outside world and your clients, the more chance you've got of losing those revenue streams. And if you look back over the last 12 months as to who literally has paid you the most money, look at it completely from that full report from your CRM or from your finance system, which companies have paid us the most money over the last 12 months. You need to start at the top of that list, and you need to work your way down, having a catch up with them, making sure that you know what's going on in their world. Because if you don't know what's going on in their world, you've no chance of offering product or service.
Yeah, I just want to echo that. We've done that as a project in our business, and we're certainly driving our clients towards doing that. And I think there is a mistake sometimes that gets made in business, where once we obtain a client, we kind of think we got them. But the reality is that all of your customers, unless what you do is like supremely unique, all of your customers right now are sat on somebody else's prospect list. There is someone else out there who has a salesperson in their business, potentially, who wants your client now to be their client. So if you are not completely showering those guys in love, then you are risking that you might lose that, which then means you've got to do twice as much new business effort to fill that gap. And it's something that unfortunately we come across that quite a lot. The people just take it for granted that they've got a client. And actually, in a weird way, it's never been easier to start a conversation than it is now, because it's just a very simple, hi, how's things? There's no agenda to it properly. You're not ringing them to try and get more from them. You're just trying to open a conversation, but benefit does come from that. And you might find that they've got more opportunities for you than you thought they had. They're certainly some of the best placed people in the market to refer you into some of the other people that you'd like to speak to as well. And that's always an opportunity. But as much as anything, it just ring fences what you've already got. I think one thing as well, I just want to go back to Gary's question about sort of like measurables. We see people set KPIs in two types of ways, a good way and a bad way. So bad way is, I've done it a number of times, walk into a business, look at KPIs, and one of the KPIs might be salesperson needs to do, I'm going to use round numbers here, 20 meetings a week. Okay, why do they do 20 meetings a week? Well, we expect them to work from home for one day, but they're out in their field for 4 days. If they're doing 5 meetings a day, they're going to be pretty busy. So that feels like we're getting our pound of flesh because they're in meetings all day. Bad way. Bad way to KPIs. Just reverse engineer your sales process. We talked about sales process earlier. There'll be conversion rates all the way through that. And if you start at the end and work your way forwards, you will know what those levels of activity needs to be in order to get to the end result. And I appreciate some of you guys might have a sales process that's a day or two. I've worked in industries where our sales processes were 2 years, lots of stakeholders, 10 sales stages, really complex. But we knew what we needed to do today in order to generate the revenue we wanted in 2 years, because we'd actually got the data from our mapped out sales process, worked in that sales process for a period of time through CRM, created data around conversion rates. We had conversion rates through sales stages. We had conversion rates by product, conversion rates by customer type, conversion rates by individual salesperson. That's how I operated as a sales director back then. I'm a massive fan of that. What can't speak can't lie, as they say. And there's a lot of emotion in sales, a lot of thought, and a lot of feeling. And a lot of your sales guys will lead with words like that. It'll be like, well, I think, I feel, I feel this customer's this, that customer's that. When you've got hard data and hard evidence, you can really do some damage. And I think for me, KPI should be set that way rather than just trying to make your salespeople busy.
So we'll keep moving on down these because we are well behind schedule-wise. So
that's not like us.
Again, if you've got any questions regarding any of this stuff, please fire it up onto the chat function. If we don't get through today, more than happy to get back to anyone on LinkedIn afterwards. Next question was how to contact existing customers to develop business opportunities. I'm going to tie that in, I think, with also fresh prospecting. The guys who run social selling training courses will tell you that social selling is the best way to get in contact with prospects. The guys who teach cold calling will tell you that cold calling is the best way to get in contact with prospects. The guys who teach Zoom training will tell you that Zoom is the best way to get in contact with prospects. My view is completely that there is no one best way. It is a mixture of all of them. Ian, if I said I was going to try and get in contact with you, it might be best to try and use my phone and ring you on your mobile. David, if I said I was going to try and get in contact with you, I might find you on LinkedIn. Bill, it might be an easy one to ring your reception and get your mobile number. Every company operates differently, and every person as an individual operates differently as to where they hang out. I managed to get someone on our podcast the other day that I have been absolutely stalking for the last 6 months in any way possible. Invited them on, couldn't get in contact with them, can't get them on the phone, messaged them on LinkedIn. They didn't even look at my message on there. The other day, Rich and I were doing a podcast with James, and there was about 200 people on it. We're clicking through to see who's on there. This guy sat there watching us talk. I private messaged him through a webinar that we were doing. We then got him onto the podcast. He's now sat on the hub, and we've got a meeting to talk about what we can do with his sales team. There is no one best way to prospect. There's no one best way to be getting in contact with your buyers. With your buyers. It is a case of there's not one size fits all. It's whatever they prefer. So when it comes to contacting existing customers to develop business opportunities, find out from them. We've been running we've got an organisation that do cleaning equipment and cleaning supplies, so they've been mad busy at the moment, but we've been looking to get them to more schools, so we've been helping them with a campaign of reaching out to schools. For some reason, schools don't like Zoom. We thought to start with part of our sales process for this company was going to be give them a call, see if we can help with anything, book a Zoom in with one of the cleaning experts. They just don't want to speak on Zoom, so we've adjusted it. It's now mobile numbers and we contact them through the phone. It's just how they want to operate. The main thing that I'd say there is make sure that you are getting in contact with them in one way, shape or form. Zoom is a really good way to do it. We're massive advocates of Zoom. I used to be able to have realistically those face-to-face 3 meetings a day, and that was if I planned my diary effectively. Me and Rich can do 7, 8 in a day. We're reasonably back to back, and with an hour comfortably for lunch, we can get a lot more done within that. So Zoom's a great way to do that, and so that moves on to the next part about how to use Zoom or similar when it comes to selling. I'll let you take on that.
Can I go back a step? Just on the contacting existing clients thing. Just there's tons of ways that you can do it. One way not to do it is email. Please, like if your method of just reaching out to check in with people's email that's not going to cut the mustard. It's not personal enough. It's not intimate enough. It's not going to look like you care enough. And they are traits you need to be displaying at the minute. So Zoom if you can, phone's okay. If you are going to go to a text-based method, WhatsApp instead of email all day long, because it's still slightly more personal than an email. It just, when people get emails to check in, if I'm honest, when I get that and I've had them, it feels a bit insincere. If I'm honest, that person couldn't be bothered to pick up the phone to me to check in properly. So definitely don't use email. But also, if you are ringing existing clients for business opportunities, whether that's opportunities with them or opportunities for referrals into people just like them, who probably by definition they're being your target audience. It's a really simple piece of advice. Ask. It amazes me how many people don't ask for the opportunity. They don't ask for opportunities in their business, and they don't ask for referrals. There's a ton of stats out there about this that it's something ridiculous. Like 85% of buyers would happily recommend and refer somebody they bought something from that they liked, but like less than 10% of salespeople ever ask for that referral. It's fascinating, really, when you think about it. And now, in the same way that you have to have empathy for them, they're probably going to have some empathy for you. Again, we're all in the same storm. And if you turn around to somebody and said, look, we love working with you, Mr. Customer, and we enjoy working with people just like you. Is there anyone else in your network that you'd feel comfortable introducing us to? That'd help me out massively right now. I'd really appreciate it if you could. And you're asking somebody that question directly that you've been working with for months or years. Tell me how many of them are going to point blank say no. Don't think you're going to get many. You might get some, but you're not going to get many. Sorry, Finch, just want to chat that one in.
Probably one of the most frequent things that we get messaged on LinkedIn or asked. I wonder if you could help me. I'm struggling at the moment. I've been told I need to get more referrals. What's the best way to ask for a referral? And we always come back really simple and say the best way to ask for a referral is to ask for a referral. The reason that people don't get referrals is because they don't ask. And I really said they're asking if there's anyone else in their network they can work with. If you do that to every single prospect, if every single prospect, 1 in every 2 goes no, still one extra one that you've got. And not every one of those will turn into something, but you can realistically, your own marketing budget can be your own marketing strategy can come from the clients itself. And if something to do is if you can be specific on that. So if, for example, I know that Richard Few knows somebody else, I've seen that they're connected on LinkedIn, a really easy way for your sales team to be doing this. Richard, I've seen that you're connected to Lucy Few on LinkedIn. I wonder if you can help me. I've been trying to get in contact with Lucy. I think there's some stuff to really help her with. What would the best way for me to be in contact? What do you think would be the best way for me to get in contact with her? 99.999% of the time, Richard will go, oh, I'm more than happy to introduce you. Yeah, do you want me to introduce you? What's the best way to introduce you? How can I put you in front of this person? So if you know that someone else is connected or you know that they work with someone else, your current clients will often be the easiest and best route to your next best client. If you think of your perfect best client at the moment from a revenue perspective, also someone that you really get on with, the odds are that they will socialize with similar people. They will know similar people from similar sized businesses in the same industries. They're all networking in the same sorts of sectors. Just asking for that referral is absolutely so powerful. It's probably the biggest tip that anyone can take from today is to ask for more referrals. And just jumping onto the chat, Samantha, you've obviously put about having monthly sales meetings. We usually do half a day. We've done 2 remotely since lockdown. I think half a day on a call is too long. Couldn't agree with you anymore. We've adjusted all of our training programs now. We don't do more than 3 hours on Zoom if we're doing a training program, and we'll only do that if it's a large group and we're breaking it up into sessions. Sitting in front of a camera and in front of a PC for long amounts of time is one of the biggest ways to kill momentum in your sales meetings. And most of our sessions now, rather than doing full days or half days, we do them in hour and a half every single week. So again, guys, if your sales meeting is still half a day or a full day on Zoom or something like that, just be prepared to give people lots of breaks if it is something that you need to do in that. Or even better, break it up, do an hour and a half at the start of the day, an hour and a half at the end of the day. It just refreshes things a little bit for people.
Yeah, David has also asked a question about the fact that all Zooms start with an email. Yeah, I guess the methodology of sending out an invite for that Zoom call is an email. But I think for me, again, there's no reason why you can't call someone to set up a Zoom call in the same way traditionally you'd call someone to set up a face-to-face meeting. You could drop that person a text or WhatsApp or a LinkedIn message or all of those other methods for me, although they're still text-based, they're still slightly more personal than email. And for one reason, on WhatsApp and LinkedIn, at the very least, people still get to see your face when you communicate with it. And that's like a really small thing. But on an email, typically it's a white piece of paper with a load of words on it. WhatsApp's great. It's slightly more personal. And I'd be expecting for most of your sales guys and girls out in the field, if they've genuinely got intimate relationships with their customers, they should have their mobile telephone numbers. In the world that we live in now, there's no one in our supply chain, in our business, that doesn't have my mobile number. So the other great thing particularly with WhatsApp is it shifts the relationship. So email is a very formal relationship. It's very, okay, we only exist in professional world. If you are relationship driven as a business, if you can exist in the parts of people's phones where their friends and family also exist, it shifts how they view you. It shifts their perception of your relationship. And we know that the deeper the relationship you have with somebody, the more familiar they are with you and you are with them, the probability of them not using you anymore, or at the first time you drop the ball, they move on to another supplier, is a lot less if they're really bought into you at an emotional level. And that's one way of doing it. So to set up a Zoom call, ultimately at some point you're probably going to email out a link, but to introduce the idea of having a Zoom call, you could do that through a multiple of different mediums.
I think with Zoom as well, and we'll move on from this, Zoom has changed, even before COVID, we were massive advocates using Zoom and we use it a lot. And one of the other biggest benefits, it's never been easy to get 3 decision makers in one room. If you previously would have had to go to site, go and hope that those 3 people were available, or arrange 2, 3, 4 weeks ahead to make sure that they're all available, so much easier to organise that now. So we're bringing multiple people onto Zoom. I'm going to jump forward a couple of points now, but I think this is one of the most important ones. Out there at the moment, just hands up, who's got furloughed staff at the moment? Is this something that a lot of people have got from a sales perspective? We're seeing it across sectors. There's a lot of people that are furloughed. So one there. Okay, so not many. Okay, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so we've got people who've got furloughed staff. This is something that we're getting asked tremendously at the moment. People are absolutely firing this through. Gary Vaynerchuk summed this up for me perfectly about 5 weeks ago and said, "This is the great pause that you've all been waiting for." And that was all he said. It was a tweet that he put out and it went absolutely viral. As sales leaders, as MDs, I'm sure you guys are always saying, "I'd love to do that with the sales team. We'd love to upskill the sales team. We'd love to do this with the sales team." We just don't have time at the moment. The sales team are out there trying to generate revenue. They're in front of clients. I don't want to take them off the road. I don't want to take them off the pipeline to do this stuff. This is the best time you're going to get, hopefully in the next decade. Hopefully this doesn't crack on again. But within the next decade, this will be the best chance that you've got to do some professional development with your staff. And there is more resources, more things ever than available online to help you do these things. But for some organisations, they're coming to us and going, we need you to do some CPD. Can you find out what the staff need? Come back to us and run that. Saves quite a lot of time, but you don't have to pay someone to do this. CPD doesn't cost the earth. You can start with the sales team, get them all doing some CPD themselves and come in and explaining what that is. So say, for example, if you said to all your team, "Guys, I want to make sure moving forward we're using this time effectively. Could you all go away and I want you to do a review on our pipeline at the moment or our sales process?" And then we're going to get together and we'll all have a discussion around our sales process. What you would design as your sales process versus what the team will design as their sales process, often very different. The team are front facing and in front of clients. We'll put some good stuff in there, makes it easier for them. We'll put some bad stuff in there as well, so be wary of that. But at the moment, the sales team will have more time than ever. Furloughed staff can do professional development. They're not allowed to be revenue generating in a sales perspective, but the guidelines that we've got and we've checked are that we're working with furloughed teams at the moment. So as long as they are not physically out there generating revenue, your business, which is their job role, professional development is absolutely fine. Doing things like getting them to run through, it's a simple one, but doing a book club with them, get them looking at a particular thing. So start with why, get them looking at that, find out what the reason is behind it, make sure that your sales team are coming out of this stronger than they went in, because you can guarantee when this all starts going back, you won't have time for professional development. You won't have time to be doing some skills-based stuff with them. You won't have time to be analysing where the skills gaps are within your business because you will be so busy running it and in it, as will the team be. So really, really important to be using this time effectively to do some professional development. If you've got a sales manager within that, go to your sales manager of that team, get them to put together a professional development plan to run with the team. It doesn't have to be something that we're doing every single day, but I mean, from our perspective, we've got a team member who's furloughed at the moment. I have never done more CPD, and he's going to come out as an absolute bullet out of a gun when we get back to the when he comes back into the business from our side of things. So, looking at professional development and analysing the skills gaps that they've got at the moment. It doesn't take too much time to look at all the free resources and things that there are online. If you can't pay someone to come in and do that for you, there's so many things that you can do with a bit of imagination to help you team.
I think on the topic of plans, one of the questions that came through on Gary's list was around sort of a bit of a lack of creativity from maybe some of the salespeople in businesses. I think that comes back to a similar thing. I think putting them in charge and them creating their own plan. Often if salespeople aren't being creative, it's either not in their DNA or their values, so therefore there's possibly a recruitment question there. But actually, if it is, but they're not doing it, I'll just look at how you facilitate that at the moment. And for me personally, as a sales leader, I was never a great fan of giving my team their plans. I always allowed them to give their plans to me. Right, this is what we need from you this year. So the first question is, like, if you massively objecting to that and say that's impossible, like, that's fine, let's have a conversation about it. If you're saying that that's possible, I want you to tell me how you're going to do it. And therefore they own that because they've done it for themselves. And the great thing is now, from a creative perspective, that again, the opportunity that technology affords us, it moves geographical boundaries. I mean, a lot of businesses operate a regional sales infrastructure to some level or another. I've not always been a massive fan of that personally. I think I'm always been more of a fan of vertical sales structures rather than regional sales structures, because if you're vertically driven as a salesperson, you can genuinely become an expert in your clients. It's kind of hard to do that when you're operating regionally and you've got a really, really broad mix. But the objection's always been around travel time. Well, we don't have that now, and we won't have it for a little while longer. So we've got, again, clients of ours where we've been pushing them to maybe make that shift. They're now wanting to make that shift because it's easier, because they can turn their sales guys and girls into absolute experts of a particular market, a particular vertical that they target, rather than them managing customers because they live within an hour of them. It kind of creates an opportunity. So for me, from a creative perspective, empower them, give them the tools to tell you how they're going to do it. And it's really hard to do it, but have to just keep your mouth shut and let them do that. Let them exhaust it. You might challenge some stuff in there. Obviously, from experience, you'll know what's right and what's wrong, but let them own that plan rather than giving it to them. Let them tell you what their KPIs are. So, right, okay, you're going to hit this number. These are the activities you're going to do. So what does that look like? How much of this do you think you're going to want to do or need to do in order to achieve that? And if you get to a point where your salespeople have crafted out that, they've told you what they're going to do, how they're going to do it, what numbers they're going to follow, and that's their plan, like one-to-ones and management of that person comes a ton easier because it's theirs.
I think one of the final things, I'm just conscious that we're sort of hitting the last few minutes. Yeah, we're tangent. One of the things I would also say here is there's a real key part for your salespeople and your business to be land grabbing at the moment. So one of the things that we've done, and I mean, Ian just sort of hit me when you mentioned it there, but Ian just mentioned that they've done got 1,500 people registered for a webinar that they were doing. And this is a really good time to be getting in front of people. There are more people than ever before watching webinars and sat at home building themselves up from a CPD perspective. So if you can provide that to other people, it also means that, I mean, when our sales guy, Tom, when he comes back on board with us and he's on furlough, I'm going to have more than ever resources to hand over to him. We've been running webinars left, right and central, which means that altogether we've probably got, say, another 2,500 people that are now in our CRM because they've attended our webinars or they've interacted with us in some way, that Tom can go back and can follow up. So the stuff that you're doing there is phenomenal stuff there. You get 1,500 people registered for a webinar. Make sure that the data that you've captured from that is passed out to your sales team. It's a really warm way to go into someone going, it's such a pleasure from this webinar. I hope you enjoyed it. What did you take from it? Just wondering if there's anything else that we could help you with. Are you free to jump on a Zoom call? to have a chat about a particular thing. And it's a really good way of building resources at the moment. I mean, everything is going to start moving. It's not an if, it's a when. So when that does start moving, if you're arming your team with as many resources and as many skill sets as possible to boost out of this, it is going to put you leaps and bounds ahead of anyone else of the competition. I think the biggest thing that people are doing now is focusing too much, and we need to generate revenue. If we can't generate revenue at the moment, don't completely park that. Keep working your pipeline, but be using the other resources that we can at the moment, so that when we do shoot out of this, it's a really quick upward curve.
Yeah, I just want to pick up something that Samantha's, but actually before I do that, just want to clear up time. I've got this in my diary till 12. Is that right? Or was it 11:30? 12.
Yeah, it's till 12. Yeah.
Richie, you can log off, mate, if you want half 11. That's fine. Samantha just put on there about just a question about how do people celebrate the wins. Obviously, the fact that you guys used to have a cup, which is great. It's I guess it's different. And I guess some of the same rules apply, which is, I think, publicly celebrating success in front of everybody else is important. But I think followed up with something a bit more intimate, whether that's a handwritten note, handwritten card to their home address, we can still do that. Is a really nice way to do it. But I think I'm not sure whether you're hosting team meetings at the moment. That's a great way to shout about success. Utilizing video as well. So we are big users of video in our business. That might not come as any great surprise to you. We use it through social it's a big part of our lead generation activity. I use it personally to send updates to the team via WhatsApp on video rather than sending emails and messages. But also with some level of frequency as well, I will send a personal video to one of the guys in the team to say something that a couple of lines in a message or an email might have been okay. But I think when you're talking to somebody, you can add body language, you can add pitch and tonality into that, and you can make that feel really, really sincere. So I think just doubling up on celebrating it publicly, but also just following it up with something quite personal to them is a nice way of doing it. But prior to that, again, just redefining what success looks like. It will be different for different people. It could be, it could be a financial target. If you're finding it particularly hard to get through the door of new opportunities at the minute, celebrating that when it happens, and like I say, what a win looks like now might not be the same as what a win looked like a few months ago. And I think if you've identified what success looks like, then you can pick out the people that are championing the behaviours that you want the rest of the team to adopt, elevate them, promote them, show them that this is the right way of doing it, and you'll drag a few of the other guys along for the ride as well.
Yeah, and I think that's from what you said there as well. That comes with creating that culture behind it. I mean, Rich talked about video there. We're massive advocates of that in every way, shape, or form. If we've ever got a chance to send a voice note or a video rather than a text or message, I mean, you might have some of the team notes. It's something we've sort of got on board. I think we very much, but I think because Rich and I interact with the team like that, the team have started interacting with clients like that. As a business, being honest, we're not a very formal business, to be honest. There's certain things that we are very formal about, but we don't send lengthy emails. Hi, such a body, hope you are well during this trying time. We do send a lot of voice notes, we do send a lot of WhatsApps. And I think for us, that has really helped us grow as a business, because we sort of, I think we're more seen as a friend. Sending out a voice note to someone, sending a video to someone is a much more personalised way of getting in front of them. And one of the biggest things that we're advising certain clients in certain industries, doesn't work in every industry, but as your very first engagement with someone, it used to be that email, hi, I think we could help you with potentially this X, Y, and Z. Could we have a conversation? It'd be really nice to talk to you about it. Please get back to me at your earliest convenience. Hope you are well, kind regards. And from now, if I'm approaching someone as someone I really want to speak to, one of the biggest things that you can do on LinkedIn at the moment is you can send videos to people. You can send a video, or you can send a voice note to someone. Now that to me is really personalised. If salespeople do this to me, and it always, they've got a very good chance of getting me on the phone if they send me a personalised message. Hi Jonathan, really enjoyed that video that you put out the other day around closing. There's a couple of bits that I really took from that. And I wonder if I could pick your brains on a couple of things if you're free this week. And let me know some times that work for you. It'd be really good to catch up. Thanks. What person's name is. And that feels completely different to me now than a cold approach on email, than a cold approach through LinkedIn, just asking to get in contact. Number one, they took a bit of time to look at something that I've done. And within different industries, I know not everybody is a massive advocate or user of LinkedIn professionally. In certain industries, it doesn't exist as much as others. but there's always things that you can find about people. If you go into the news section of a company's website, find out on an award that they won 6 months ago, find out something that they did, something that they released. It's never been easier to find out information from people. I mean, we got through the Lancashire Business Review magazine the other day, and I'm scrolling through it, looking at all these people. I'm just going, we could definitely work with you. We could work with you. They won an award, fantastic. So the next thing that we're doing is getting in contact with them either through LinkedIn or sending voice notes over, saying, massive well done on the award that you won at the Red Rose Awards, or huge well done on that new employee that you've just taken on. Well done on your promotion. People love personalised stuff, and it gives us an opportunity to personalise our outreach to people.
It's, and the same with, I mean, I know we touched on this already, but just to put that together with something we talked about earlier, when you're reaching out to existing clients, again, another great medium. I did a ton of this earlier on during the lockdown period, because I knew, you know, our clients typically are, certainly with the strategic stuff that we do, they're owner managers. So I knew I wanted to show that we cared, but also I didn't want to doorstep them with a phone call when they're up to here with doing a ton of different stuff. So sat on my desk, got my little mini tripod, which cost 30 quid off Amazon, and my little mini lapel mic, which cost 15 quid off Amazon. And I sat there and just recorded a little 2-minute, hey, just checking in. Didn't want to not get in contact with you, but appreciate that you know, you can have a ton of stuff going on at the minute. Want to check in, make sure that you're okay. How's things? How's that? You know, just a conversational video for a couple of minutes, and just sent it to him. Just said that I didn't want to send this on email. I wanted to just send you a personalised message. And the reply rate on those from our existing customers was massive. And the gratitude we got back from them was massive as well. And actually, we've had a lot of these clients that had to put stuff on hold with us because obviously everyone was managing cash flow, come back to us really, really quickly because of how we've treated them during this time when they weren't spending money. And I think for me, the difference in effort between sending an email versus sending a video in real terms is very little difference in effort, but the perceived level of effort from the other person is massively different. And for me, the greatest gift you can give anybody is your time. It's the only thing we don't have an infinite supply of. So when someone feels like you've given them your time, then you're building up reciprocal value within that relationship, which is what most relationships are based on. And it's doing something, like I say, a little bit different. And that's why when you provide education, I know it's a topic we've touched on earlier, it's been up in the comments, of providing CPD out to customers as well. That's law of reciprocation. That's I'm going to give to you, and ultimately at some point you're going to feel compelled when you have an opportunity to give back to me. And then utilising video and utilising things that the perception is they've taken more effort and more time, even though in reality it's an extra minute, right? It's not a lot. You capture it and you WhatsApp it to them, and it sparks a conversation. So yeah, short little videos. Again, you can use them for your staff as well. Like we said, we use them for our staff, we use them for existing clients, and like Jonathan said, for new clients, it stands out a mile. Right? We all get, like, everyone. I'm pretty sure there's 26 people on this call at the minute. On a weekly basis, you're going to get pitched at on LinkedIn, right? All the time. You get the connection request followed by the sales pitch, and then the second sales pitch, then the slightly passive aggressive. This might be the last time I contact you message, and right, all these like program messages. I'm telling you now, if a video drops in there and someone's gone, "Hi Gary, lovely to connect," like, straight away they've got your attention. So think about yourself as a buyer. Think about yourself as someone that gets sold to, and apply that same feeling that you get to how you want your sales guys to approach people, because they're thinking the same stuff.
On another note, if anyone's sales teams are struggling with this, we are running a free webinar on this, so give us a shout on it. If anyone wants to pass it out to the team, I'll send the link out to Gary afterwards so they can fire it out to people. There's a quick story that I just want to tell you guys on this, and I think the key word that I got from that, Rich, was like the personalised thing. For me, looking outside the box is something you can do personalised for someone that goes absolutely leaps and bounds. So a little while ago, we had someone who came on one of our open courses. They'd spent about 295 quid with us, and the sales director afterwards got in contact with me and said, I spoke to the person who we sent on this course, just wanted to say how much they really enjoyed it. It was phenomenal. I'd love to look at doing some work with you guys in the future. For the next 3 weeks, I tried in every way I could to get in contact with this person. Tried to get the mobile number, couldn't get the mobile number. Tried ringing reception, they were never in at the office. Tried to ring one of the other offices, could not get hold of this person. went to the very last stage of it, emailed them to say, I've been trying to get in contact with you, couldn't get in contact with them whatsoever. I turned up at their offices, no, nothing, wouldn't see me. I don't think they were there, or whether they weren't there and ignoring me, whatever the reason. So across from us, where the Geek Bunker is, just behind, we've got a company called Media Village, and they produce anything branded-wise, anything that you want, your squeaky balls, milk, whatever you want, they'll put a branding on it. So I went over to Media Village, and I knew that this company were just about to relocate. They were going to go to a new office, and I also knew that they'd just done a merger with another organisation. So I went over to Media Village, and I got some mugs made that had Sales Geek on one side, and they had this company's logo on the other side of it. Best part of 20 quid it cost me altogether. It wasn't an expensive gift. I asked our office manager to wrap them nicely, put them into a little box. And I sent a photo of the box and the photo to this person. I managed to, on email, and said, I wonder if you could let me know when would be best to drop this in. We've got you a little moving-in present from the Geeks. Within 2 minutes, they responded. Said, oh, I'm really sorry, I've been so busy. Are you free on Thursday at 2 o'clock? I'll make sure that I've got an hour in the diary and kind of quick through and see what you guys are up to. They are one of our biggest clients now. On a retained basis, they spend probably more money with us than quite a lot of our other clients put together. They are one of our best customers from a training perspective. Without that little personalised thing that cost me less than 20 quid, I could have sent them a bottle of Moe, I could have sent them that hamper that you can buy offline. It was a really personalised thing, knowing that they were going to be moving offices. And also, from our perspective, I know that there's 4 mugs in their offices. Even if I don't get a meeting, it says, oh, just drop it at reception. I know that there's 4 mugs knocking around their business for the next, I don't know, however long mugs last, with our logo on. And at some point, they will have an issue with the sales department. They will have that time when the MD sat there going, flipping heck, I don't know what I'm going to do with the sales team. And just with that little bit more care and a little bit more attention, I mean, it works very well. The plan we've mapped out there with them, we've got in front of them. But if not, again, it's playing that infinite game. And for 20 quid, I've got to say, I think that was probably one of the best tools or best sales things that we've ever bought for someone. But it was just a little bit more personalised than just sending, like I said, the email that would normally follow.
I'm just looking down the list of questions. I'm trying to think whether we've missed any of these or not. Right, there's a question in there about how to approach a product launch virtually. Do you mind if I ask, just by a show of hand, who asked that question? Just want to get a bit more context to it if we can. If not, we can cover it off anyway. No?
If that was you, Colin, was it?
Yeah, it might be someone who's registered, not come.
You're on mute, Colin.
Yes. It wasn't exactly that, but certainly you're right. Where you've got to do tests and you've got to do samples and you've got to see it running through their factory, you can't do that virtually.
Okay. So just give me some context to products and what you want to achieve with it.
So, for example, our drums that you can see behind me.
Yeah.
If we're trying to get a customer to change from using steel or plastic drums to our drums for good environmental reasons, they have to do extensive trials through their supply chain. They don't particularly like doing that, and we like to manage that process so that we can handle problems as they arrive. During the current situation, it's extremely difficult to obviously, from an access, from social distancing, and from trying to do it in any other vehicle other than being with the team on site, trying to get that to happen. So clearly what's happening at the moment is that pipeline is frozen simply because we can't do any of those trials that are currently necessary to move the project forward.
Could you give the customer the tools to do it themselves in any way?
You could, but invariably the customers don't want to do it themselves because they're not capable sometimes of managing that change management. So they want someone else to do it, and particularly because it's a risk. And if it goes wrong, they want someone to blame, and invariably they don't want to blame themselves.
Yeah.
So they're quite happy for someone else to take it on. If you leave it for them to do, it can take years, absolute years to do. So they get fed up with it, or something else comes along and it gets put aside.
Okay, so I think there's obviously some stuff there that you can't change, and will naturally change a bit as lockdown restrictions and things start to change. However, I think as a general rule, if okay, right. So first things first. I think one thing we are seeing a lot of at the moment, we're seeing it within our customer base, is people seem quite motivated at the minute to review a lot of things in their business, including their supply chain. So there are a lot of people with maybe in operational roles in businesses challenging and questioning the things that they're doing right now, which the great thing is, as a potential supplier to them, possibly lead them to a form of thinking which will mean they're more open to exploring new things and trying new stuff. One thing I would probably flag is that if I know they want to play the blame game, but that aside, I think if they're not willing to do it themselves, or they take too long to do it, that naturally would flag up to me that possibly in some way through the information they're reading about the products at the moment, that it hasn't created a big enough need for them, that they possibly don't see the value enough to drive them to want to do it. And I guess a scenario that I would probably paint out was if the managing director or the FD in that business, let's say the advantage was a huge cost saving advantage ultimately, right down the line. If that message, that really compelling message, got to the right person in that business, trust me, at some point somebody will have that on their to-do list to get done in a certain time frame, because the cost of not doing it would be greater than the cost of doing it.
Sure.
When that happens, that generates a real need in the business. And I think I'd probably just have a look at, again, come back to the value proposition thing and how you're putting this and presenting this to people, that I think if it's super compelling, people will get motivated really quickly to want to do it, because they can't afford not to.
I agree. I mean, certainly I totally agree that you need a champion in the business that's going to push that outside of our business, because if you don't have that handshake, you're wasting your time. My dilemma is post-COVID, in terms of the freezing of that pipeline, because of the restrictions on doing it. Nobody really wants to progress it. Even the champion is stepping back a bit, because obviously there are other priorities, and clearly the value proposition is diluted simply because there are other pressures on the business. So my question was really, how do I try to keep that on track, given that there are some distractions for a lot of businesses in their projects, in taking up new opportunities, in trying to get that change management through that. And I have, in terms of the virtual technology, that doesn't help me at all, because it doesn't demonstrate anything. So the question really was, is there anything else I can use to supplement that process?
I think the other thing to just be thinking as well, Mr. Connor, I think there is certain digital tech that will help you, but probably not in the way that you're thinking. I'm going to put you slightly on the spot here. What three things does your product / service solve? What does it do for people?
It's cheaper, so it's a less expensive product than a steel or plastic drum.
Ooh.
It is renewable resource as paper, whereas plastic and steel is not renewable.
Yeah.
And it lowers emissions, CO2. So if you looked at a comparison between the different materials and our product, it would be half of the CO2 emissions. Now, clearly, global warming is topical, and therefore we'd like to think that was pushing it forward. Obviously, cost as well. We'd like to think that was positive wherever possible, and clearly renewable resource. Now, plastic's got a feather in its cap with COVID, simply because of the sterile nature of plastic. That's taken the pressure off, but clearly it will come back. So I think those three are good enough reasons to push it forward.
Absolutely. And who would you typically who would you aim this at? Give me a job title that you would go, this is someone who we'd normally be aiming at.
We'd have to go towards the MD, because the buyer is just really not only interested in one of those dynamics. Technically, there are challenges. So any technical guy tends to walk away because of the the differences between the different materials and the supply chain. Warehouse guys will reject it because they don't like any change whatsoever. So getting through the warehouse is one of the fundamental issues that you have to do from a grassroots up perspective. So really, it's the MD and the warehouse.
This is quite a broad question. You might not know the answer to it, but don't worry, give me an estimate if not. If you were to go out and prospect the product or service to 100 people prior to COVID, how many out of 100 would go, yeah, actually, let's have a look at this, and you start them on your journey down your pipeline as an estimate? Would you say 10 out of every 100, 20, 1 out of every 100? What number as an estimate would that be?
Less than 5.
So less than 5 out of 100. And I'm guessing that's gone down to practically 0 at the moment?
Practically, because no one wants to test.
Yeah. So what we are going to see coming out of this, I mean, this is a mindset shift. James did a really good session around this the other day, but is the process that we all go through during COVID when a crisis hits. And the first thing that we all do is go to that sort of panic mode are we going to have enough revenue coming in? What are we going to do around it? But we are seeing people come out of that now into more of a planning mode. And for me, it's the perfect time to be, as I mentioned before, doing some education for the sector. You might not be able to close any of these people straight away on getting trials in. Their production lines might not be going, or they've got other things at the moment. But the one thing that you could be doing at the moment is building community, getting them into the pipeline. So the 3 things that you mentioned there before, you're cheaper, it's a renewable resource, and it lowers emissions, CO2. That is something that MDs will find interesting. Whether that's going to be later on that they'll find that interesting, or whether it's now that they'll find that interesting. But you could definitely host a webinar to bring people in. This would do 1 or 2 things. You would bring, you advertise a webinar and say, we're going to run a completely complimentary webinar free of charge that's going to show you how to make things cheaper, more of a renewable resource, and lower emissions of CO2 within your production line. You would guaranteed get some people that would come on that. How many you would have to test, but based on, I'm guessing that you've got somewhere in the business a data set that you could market that to with either clients that haven't got you or email. Find out blast it out there to everybody, set it up on Eventbrite, see how many people come back from that. If you only get 5 or 10 people on it, don't worry about it. Just contact those 5 or 10 people and say, we're not going to run this because we don't think it's going to be right for you. But what I would guess that you would probably get is a lot of people at the moment who would normally be working on those production lines are into that planning stage of how are we going to get ahead of the competition? What are we going to do to create efficiency moving forward? And when things do start moving again, you've then got that data that you can be getting in contact with them. But what I probably think will happen, I'm sticking myself a little bit out on a limb here, I think you will get 1 or 2 people that will get back to you off the end of that webinar and go, Colin, it'd be really good to have a conversation with you. This is something that we've been thinking about previously. We've just never really had time to plan it. Whatever happens, it will be a form of positive result. You'll either end up with a lot of people attending it, and some data coming out of the back of that, or you'll end up going, do you know what, only 5 or 6 people registered for this. Maybe we need to shift something. Maybe we need to look at doing something different. But either way, it will give you some clarity on where the market sector's up to, and you will definitely end up with some data or follow-ups that you can pass to your sales team, or you can follow up personally to see if it's a priority for certain people. Anything you'd add to that, Rich?
Yeah, I think the new thing for me, and I apologise in advance, Colin, so I'm going to make some assumptions in this statement I'm going to make, but I'm obviously conscious of time as well. But I would say I'm a big fan of doing this anyway, but even more so now, and certainly with a product that's innovative. And you've probably seen the law of a sort of adaptation of innovation, right? So you get your early adopters and then your early majority. If you take the mindset of, right, okay, I need some early adopters again, I'm going to need some people to really pioneer this and drive this almost within their own businesses. What you'll start to realize that although your product is relevant for, let's say your product was relevant for 1,000 people, for argument's sake, the truth is it's probably super relevant and super appealing to like 10% of that, if not less. And what you need at the minute is not people that might be clients. You want people that are going to be fans, like people that are super motivated to want to make this happen in their organization, either because they're driven by cost, they care about the planet, they want to make a name for themselves internally and drive some change, whatever the drivers are. But if you're after MDs, for argument's sake, of a certain type of business, I would say just keep making that narrower and narrower and narrower and narrower until you like really have created some very specific, almost like avatars of some people. Because everyone's different, right? So just because you have a job title and you own a certain type of business, there are 100 other things that will differentiate you from the next person. So, you know, where we're based here in East Lancashire, we're along the M65 corridor, right? So it's a big manufacturing hotbed. So a lot of the clients that we work with in service industries, you guys are in their target audience, right? And I think back to manufacturing business that I've run sales functions in, I think about 3 of them, and actually the MDs of those 3 businesses, on paper, managing directors of manufacturing businesses in East Lancashire, certain size, but actually fundamentally they were different people with different drivers and different passions, and they were motivated by different things. So for me, one thing I would definitely say is go as narrow as you possibly can, because you need to find your early adopters, and those people are going to be people that are super passionate about making this happen.
I agree.
And like, so for me, less is more. Just get as narrow as you possibly can on that target audience, and differentiate that group of people from the rest. Now, once these guys get going and they become your champions, that energy will flood out, and you'll then start picking up people from the other 90%, as it were. But you need to get your champions on board first, your fans, your tribe members, your marketeers of the future. These guys will help you market your products because they care about it so much.
Okay, thank you.
I think, well, looking at the times, we've better start wrapping up. Any final words or tips from you, Rich?
We've said a lot of stuff today, haven't we? We've covered a lot of things very lightly. I think, like I said, I would readdress your fundamentals, like I say, in terms of value proposition, in terms of target audience, like we touched on there with Colin. Just readdress that. Certainly review sales process, review channels. So I think, like I say, we're in a planning period at the minute, in a review period. So for me, definitely go back to basics on what you're saying, who you're saying it to, how you're saying it. Review that. Review sales process. That's fundamentally like at the heart of all of this right now, because it's changed. Whether you know it's changed or whether you don't, it's changed because your buyers' buying processes have changed. Therefore, your sales process has to have changed. And I think then the third point, just really think about how you're going to reintegrate your revenue generating people back into your business. Happy people sell, looking after them properly, looking after their welfare. They've all got stuff going on at home right now, as we all have, and different challenges, and I'm rubbish at homeschooling my kids, right? So, you know, we've all got things going on. You know, people might have been affected by this virus. People, their family might have been affected by this virus. We have to be more intimate with our teams now than we were before. So I think they're the main things for me, buddy.
I think, well, I've just written 3 down there. If you can't sell, market. So if you can't go out and sell at the moment, make sure that you're marketing and you're capturing stuff, because people will start buying again. Stuff will start unfolding, and you want to make sure that you're in the very front of their island when that happens. Love your existing clients, so go back and pay some attention to all of your existing clients. Make sure that you've got a note in your diary to push your sales manager, your sales team, or personally be going out to your key accounts on every couple of weeks at least, to make sure that you've got those catch up there. And again, like Rick said, just make sure that you are ready to engage and integrate your team back into the fold, because when they come back in, it will be probably back to the madness, and anything you can do at this time to help that make it easier, or make sure that that you're on top of things, I think will really make it easier. I'll hand it over to you there, Gary.
I've nearly wrote a book here in notes. That was really good. I think the big takeaway for me is the video. I think just utilizing video to kind of reach out to team members, or, you know, customers or other people in your network, I think is fantastic. And making use of this platform, Zoom. I mean, we've seen a couple of our customers who, I think, similar to what we're doing. They've gone out to the customers, looked for a common problem, and said, "Would you like to get together in a virtual room together and chat about this particular problem?" And that seems to have gone down really well. So I think firstly, if you said, Richard, you've got to know what the problem is you're trying to solve, and if you pitch that right to people, they'll be happily kind of join in on a call. You know, I'm sure everyone in this room would like to improve the sales in some way, and it's not been hard getting people along. So it definitely works. I'd just like to say a big thanks to you guys for giving up your time. You know, I know you guys are super busy. 2,500 prospects to go at, Jonathan, so you've got a lot to do.
Go and email them. Go and email them. Individual messages. Each one of them is going to get a video from me.
Yeah, so thanks, chaps. So I've recorded this, so I'll send this out to everyone as well. I'll leave it a few days. If there's anything in particular that you don't like in it, you know, feel free. But I don't think we've covered anything really that people have a problem with.
I've got the Eventbrite link in there. If anyone wants to attend the video selling course that we're doing, completely free of charge. It's an hour of myself and Rich talking through what we've done at Sales Geek. So if anyone wants to attend that, feel free to. I've got the link onto there. If you want to fire out to any of your team members, more than happy for anyone to attend that.
If you send that to me, Jonathan, I'll ping that around to everyone in an email.
Can I just? There's one thing we've forgotten to mention, which just got to chuck in on top because it's an absolute golden ticket right now. It comes back to the sales management thing and training of your team. This comes with a caveat that you have to get express permission of the customer. But one thing you can do if you guys are holding meetings on Zoom with clients is you can get permission to record them. And obviously if you're recording them, you can then help them to get better. But also as a sales manager, you can join more meetings. It probably wasn't practical before to go with your sales team to lots and lots of meetings because of geography. But you can join in on meetings now. But also, say if you get permission, you can record them. And that's something you couldn't really do before. If one of you guys went to someone's offices and had a 1 hour meeting, you were relying on their interpretation of how that meeting went to know how it went. Whereas now, potentially, if you get permission in place, you can actually see that and see how they're talking to people and the questions that they're asking. You can coach them forwards. But so I just conscious we hadn't said that, and that is a real plus point of the technology we're using at the moment.